like most of us, you've probably asked yourself at some point, why is it that they stuff pro players into these glass boxes at big events? Well, aside from looking pretty badass, they were actually originally designed for one specific purpose: to eliminate sound coming from the fans and casters in case it gave the players on stage an edge. You see, in traditional sports, this isn't really a problem. Hearing the screams of thousands of fans can be motivating, but there's no real unfair advantage to be gained. But in esports, we've seen countless cases over the years where players have benefited from hearing crowd noise on LAN.
What is he? My goodness, how interesting. Zipex through underpass. He's got Glaive in tow as well.
Now, do these booths actually work as intended? Like, do they block out sound entirely, or do they kind of just muffle things? And with noise canceling technology becoming more and more advanced, is the answer to this problem maybe just a decent pair of headphones? Let us break down the complex history of sound on LAN and how it's actually affected some of esports' biggest moments. Okay, so with the exception of maybe tennis or golf, nearly every athlete in traditional sports can either benefit or suffer from playing in front of thousands of screaming fans. So, is sound a problem that's unique only to esports? Well, regardless of what game you play, information always matters. And since the early days of esports, we've been looking for ways to preserve competitive integrity. And in certain games, that means shutting the crowd off from players entirely, which in most cases has required getting a little bit creative. The question, of course, is, does any of this shit actually work? Or is it all just for show? Well, as MOBAs and tactical shooters like Dota, League of Legends, and Counter-Strike became more and more popular, they eventually all faced the same issue. Dota in particular added booths to the International back in 2012, while League of Legends simply used noise-canceling headphones. Although, despite the change, there were still some kinks to work out for Dota.
Die aside. Die aside.
They have the Ring of Basilius.
This is level 1.
Okay, so as they're watching this, and guys, shh.
It's a secret, all right? Who's going to scout this out?
It's going to get scouted.
Like RTK
it's going to get scouted.
Okay, so Roshan's halfway through. Does he go Plague Ward level 1? How does this work? Now, Z9, they walk out. They have a good Gale out. And Sing Sing, very low on line. They're going to kill him off by the field. They've got a fishing kill.
Some games even decided to use earbuds in conjunction with over-ear headphones. The earbuds played the game audio, while the headphones played white noise to help drown out the sound of the crowd. But over time, they realized that sound isn't the only problem. After the 2016 NALCS Summer Split Finals, TSM's AD carry, Doublelift, mentioned that he could actually feel the vibration and rumble of the fans cheering.
I actually think the crowd is super awesome. They're crazy loud and energetic, and I could just kind of like feel the energy and vibration in the game.
But with 15,000 people in attendance and no booths, was it really that surprising? Not long after that, Shroud revealed that Counter-Strike competitors faced a similar problem.
You're playing, it doesn't matter if you're in a booth or not, if you're playing and you tap a couple shots through a smoke and you hear the crowd kind of like, they'd have a giant O, you know? And you hear it, and you could feel the vibration in the booth and whatnot, and you're like, okay, that guy's in that smoke. And you just spam the shit out of the smoke, and that's it, he's dead. Here's the biggest trick that I feel people use. The biggest trick that people use at LAN, so if you're mid-round or something, and you throw a nade, and then you can hear the explosion, you know that someone's near that nade.
Sure, some of these fans were just trying to have a good time and support their teams. But there have been instances, like at the ESL Pro League Finals back in 2019, where the crowd has clearly tried to give the home team an advantage.
Just checking for the little boost on the spool, so he was not ready for this. What is he? My goodness, how interesting. Zipex through underpass. He's got Glaive in tow as well. And they get the frag! Unbelievable! Astralis
Is there an alternate universe where Zip walks down that hallway and gets killed without the predominantly Danish crowd signaling that there is an opponent awaiting him? Maybe. But after the event, he posted a twit longer addressing competitive integrity in Counter-Strike. And in his post, he makes two pretty solid suggestions of how we can fix this issue. Now, the first one is, of course, booths. They've been used in various esports for years now, so there's really no excuse not to use them at every event. His second suggestion was to reconsider the placement of the speakers at these events, and to design the stage in a manner that prevents players from feeling the vibrations created by their bassy grenades and molotovs. But is that really as easy as it sounds?
Well, Dimitri, I suppose it depends on how much time you've spent learning stage design and audio engineering. While massive esports stages may be relatively new in the grand scheme of things, large stages with complex speaker arrays are not. And there are two different types of noise cancellation at work on these stages: passive and active. Passive noise cancellation is anything you're using to physically block sound, like a booth or those large padded earmuffs that look a bit like headphones. Active noise cancellation is a technique that involves phase inversion. Now, I'm not going to bore you with too many technical details, mostly because I'm not an audio engineer, but here's a quick explanation of how it works. You can find active noise cancellation in tons of consumer headsets these days. The headset will use a microphone to take in ambient sound and then invert the waveform, known as phase inversion, and feed that back into your ears to cancel out the noise. But it's not just headphones. You can actually see this principle at work on a stage as well. If you ever notice some of the speakers pointed backwards in a PA stack, they are likely sending out a phase-inverted version of what the crowd is hearing to cancel out that noise backstage so that the crew can hear each other talk without having to yell. Now, I know that's a lot of information, but don't worry. As an esports fan, all you really need to worry about is showing up and being loud. But as someone who has stood on a few main stages in his day, I love nerding out about stage design and equipment setup for live esports events. And Dimitri, with all of your esports clout, I'm sure you've got plenty of live esports event experience. Right?
What, you mean sitting on the sidelines and watching as other better gamers duke it out on a main stage? I do, actually. And let me tell you, they weren't using controllers. Anyway, the funniest part about all of this is that back in the mid-2000s, one esport actually had all of this figured out. And it pains me to say this, because there are some of you who are definitely way too young to remember. But once upon a time, there was a game called StarCraft Brood War. Brood War is, without question, the single greatest esport of all time. It's not even a conversation. Don't believe me? Cool. Doesn't matter. You're just flat out wrong. How do I know that? Because in no other esport has a competitor who sits in a chair and sweats over a mouse and keyboard for a living entered the arena on a fucking full-blown commercial-sized jet plane. For those of you who were unlucky enough not to behold the sheer unadulterated splendor of Brood War, let me give you a quick rundown of what it was. So, StarCraft Brood War is an RTS, or real-time strategy game, released by Blizzard back in 1998. It was an expansion for the original StarCraft. The basic idea of the game is to collect resources and upgrade your military before conquering your opponents. I cannot fucking believe that society has degenerated to a point where I have to explain what StarCraft was. Anyway, the most important thing to note is that StarCraft was a game with fog of war. This means that each section of the map remains hidden until you explore it. You don't have much information about where your opponent is or what exactly they're doing without having to look for yourself. Now, as StarCraft grew in popularity, so too did its esports scene. And eventually, thousands of fans would show up to watch some of their favorite players compete. But even as early as the early 2000s, StarCraft's stages were pretty unique. You see, to avoid any information being shared between the players and the fans, Each player would sit in their own glass booth, armed with headphones and white noise machines. So if someone did something clever in Fog of War, the players couldn't hear the crowd rumble.
So this is the inside of a Gowan booth right here. This is kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, I've never been in one of these before.
Yeah, we know that, Greg. This is your first match.
So as we take a step into these booths, we can see that not only are they given headphones and earbuds to blast music in their ears so they can only hear and think about the game, but we also have these lights so the audiences can see them a little better, and even white noise generators. And everything is noise canceling, including the headphones and the booth. So literally no sound escapes this when the players end up starting that match. That is when it's focus time, and that is the only thing that they will be thinking about.
So it's safe to say that StarCraft really had their shit together. They'd already solved esports' biggest problem. But, as usual, the West had to show up and f everything up. Even today, League of Legends has chosen to continue using noise-canceling headphones rather than booths. Riot Games recently announced a partnership with Bose, which started with Worlds 2020, which means that their headphones are now used at all global Riot events. But although headphones haven't really solved the crowd noise problem in the past, Bose has made some extraordinary strides over the past few years when it comes to modern noise cancellation technology. The unfortunate thing is that we haven't really been able to test out how well they work for the past year and a half or so because, well, there's this thing called COVID, and fans haven't really been filling arenas as of late, which is a big sag. But as the world slowly returns back to normal and competitions resume with supporters, it seems as though we might have more work to do, because it's pretty clear that we haven't exactly found a proper solution to this problem. But the hope is that we're close. And who knows? Maybe once we're able to test out Bose's top-of-the-line headsets and we learn how to move speakers around properly, then perhaps one day the battle against sound on LAN will be won. But until then, it's hard to deny that Korea's original solution from the golden age of esports is still the best. They may not be perfect, but booths changed the way we think about sound in esports forever. Like, I am an elitist, but I'm not an elitist towards controller players. Like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, I'm an elitist towards these fucking League normies or fucking Valorant normies, but like, not fucking controller players. Like, come on, man. Like, if you're bullying controller players, you're bullying like a child. Like, that's just not fun. Like, it's just not even fair.
Alright, well, that's fucked up.
I'm not actually bullying you guys. Like, Christ, it's just collateral damage, man. Like, it's just, you know, like I opt Colten and it went through the fucking wall behind you and just hit you. Like,
we are controller players. We are one.
We are Legion.
You shoot at one of us.
Yes.
You shoot at all of us.
You shoot at all of us, yeah.